Hello and welcome back to Chapters and Champagne. Today we will be talking about the mid-year Freakout book tag. I hope I got that right. So before we're actually jumping into the questions, I want to go over some of my reading stats from the past 6 months. And I am using Storygraph for that. If you don't know what that is, I will link the website below. So it's the equivalent to Goodreads, but it will give you more stats and it just visualizes a little bit better your overall reading journey. All right, so I have read 14 books so far this year. My yearly goal was, I think, 30 or 35 books. So I'm a little bit behind, but I'm working on it. So far, it's been a total of 4,495 pages. Pretty good. And the majority of the books that I read were mysterious, reflective, dark, and tense. Well, I guess that's me in a nutshell. Then for the pacing, the majority of the books that I read were medium paced and fast paced. That sounds about right because I'm not a huge fan of slow paced books. And as far as page numbers go, I'm actually surprised by that because the majority of the books are over 300 pages, and typically I like to read shorter books, so I'm surprised, but I think it's because of some of the nonfiction books that I read this year. Which brings me to my next point, fiction versus nonfiction. And overall, of course, fiction is still more than nonfiction, but I am proud of myself because I did want to read more nonfiction this year, and it's been working out so far. And then the overall genre, of course, mystery thriller are right up there. Then contemporary and literary, sociology, crime, classics, young adult, psychology, autobiography. So yeah, that was the overview, and now let's get into the questions. So the first question is the best book you've read so far in 2022. Well, I will have to go with My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. I know this is a polarizing book. I know a lot of people either love it or hate it. I'm one of the people that absolutely loved it. I think it was very, very well written. It just has a lot of this like dry humor. It's a great satire. I cringed while I read it. I laughed. I almost cried because it's so sad. It has everything, but it also has layers to it. It's just overall really, really great. And in case you don't know what this book is about, it is about a unnamed main character that is living in New York City in the early 2000s, and she just has enough. She's over existence and she just wants to chill out and sleep all year. And when I heard about that, I thought, that's exactly what I want to do. So I read it and loved it. What I really, really loved about this was the different relationships that were in there as well. And to be honest, I was surprised I liked it so much because I typically like, first of all, mystery and thrillers. This is not that. This doesn't even really have a plot. This is completely character driven, so it's complete opposite of what I usually read. But the characters in here and the relationships between the characters were just so well thought out and written that it blew my mind. I really, really loved it. And I have to say, probably my favorite relationship was the one between the main character and her therapist, because her therapist was horrible. So every time, or not every time, but a lot of times, the main character would need to tell the therapist over and over again that her parents are dead. So she's in 20 sessions of therapy, and the therapist is asking,
"Oh, how are things going at home?"
And then the main character goes,
My parents are still dead.
So of course that's really funny at first, but as I was saying, there's layers to it because it's not just funny in that moment, it's also very sad because the main character is not getting the help she needs. She has a shitty therapist. And the relationship between the main character and her best friend Riva is great as well. Riva is a wannabe socialite, wants to social climb, is very concerned about her looks and trying to fit in, and just that dynamic is really, really great. And to be honest, as I was thinking about this book again more and more in preparation for this video, I feel like the main character really gives me Marla Singer from Fight Club vibes. They could be the same person. So yeah, I would definitely recommend reading the book. Like I said in the beginning, you will either like it or absolutely hate it, but if you hate it, don't come for me. All right, then the next question is best sequel you've read so far in 2022, and that's an easy one. It's none. New release you haven't read yet but want to. That would be Peter Swanson, 9 Lives. I loved The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. I think I read it a year ago or 2 years ago. Really enjoyed that. It was a thriller. This is a thriller as well. This is about 9 strangers that get a list in the mail with all of their names listed. They don't know each other. They don't know what's going on, but then they just ignore these letters and then these strangers start dying. It sounded really good. I think it came out in March, but I definitely still want to read that. And the next question is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And with that, it's gonna be Upgrade by Blake Crouch. I devoured Dark Matter and Recursion. I think it was both of them, I think I read last year. Love both of them. And when I heard that he's coming out with a new book, I knew I had to read it. I really hope it's gonna be a book of the month pick for July so that I can read it before it comes out. I'm really looking forward to it. And what happens in this book is that the main character just realizes something's different about him or different about his brain. So he notices that he doesn't need as much sleep, he can read much faster, and just everything else seems it's enhanced. So what happened here was that his genome was hacked. And that's the only thing that I've read about the synopsis, and that's all I need. I know it's going to be a great book, and I can't wait to read it. And then the next question is, what was the biggest disappointment? And for that, I unfortunately have to go with Karen Slaughter's False Witness. I am a very big Karen Slaughter fan, but this book just did not work out for me. And one of the main reasons that I didn't enjoy this book as much were the constant COVID references. And it was almost in every chapter there would be something about mask wearing, sanitizing, da-da-da. I don't want that in my books. And I know that's a polarizing thing. Again, some people want that in their books because it makes it more realistic. And then other people like me do not want to hear about it or read about it because we have been dealing with this for so long now, and I do not want to have it in my books. Okay? And on top of that, I thought the characters were just very bland. Everyone was unlikable. And it was a little bit dragging as well. In terms of graphic content, that is definitely there. I mean, it is Karen Slaughter. I do think it was a little bit less than usual, my opinion, but it's nonetheless, it's definitely still graphic. And what happens in this book is that there is an attorney. I think she's specialized in rape cases, and she gets a new case. And the guy that is hiring her knows her, she knows him, and what's even worse is that he knows something that she did 20 years ago. And the next question is, what was the biggest surprise? And with this, I have to go with The Great Gatsby. Now, I need to give a little bit of background information. I have never read The Great Gatsby before in high school. I didn't even go to high school in the US. I was born and raised in Germany, so I read all of the great German books in high school, not The Great Gatsby. We might have read Romeo and Juliet at some point, but the books that I was reading were Leben des Galilei, Der Schimmelreiter, Effie Briest, those books. But that could be a whole nother video, honestly. I digress. I was very surprised with The Great Gatsby because I have been putting it off for a long time because I was thinking, it's a classic. Am I even going to understand what's written? But I have to say, everything was great. I like the plot. I like the characters. I really like that it wasn't overly descriptive. And on the contrary, it actually left a lot of room for you to figure out what was going on. And it was very fast paced and short. And overall, I really enjoyed it. And I don't even know what else to say because I think that the majority of you guys probably already know what it's about. The next question is your favorite new author. And of course, that will have to be Ottessa Marschweg. Then the next question is newest fictional crush. And with this, I'm gonna go with Ben from the Paris Apartment. And the reason I'm saying that is there was this one character in that book that was just so thirsty for Ben. Like, she was explaining all about him and just painted him in this glorious light and he's just so hot and just so great and she really wants him and all of that. And at some point I was like, yeah, you know what? I can see that he's hot and I'm just gonna objectify fictional characters now. Your newest favorite character. And with this one, I'm gonna go with Molly the maid from The Maid. I love that character. She reminded me a lot of Eleanor Oliphant, and I need to have a crossover between the two, okay? Please, someone make this happen. Other fan fictions out there, let me know because I need to read it. Molly is just such a lovable character. She's so adorable. She has a big heart. You just want to give her a big hug. And just overall, it was so fun to read that book. And I just love Molly. She's definitely my favorite character. So what happens in this book is that Molly, that I just mentioned, is a maid in a hotel, and she is quickly becoming the suspect of a murder. So she walks into a room, just goes about her day, wants to clean, and then she finds one of the residents dead. It's a super fun book. I would highly, highly recommend it. It is definitely not like very mysterious. It's more like, what do people call this? Cozy mystery? That is actually a perfect way of describing it, but I highly recommend it. And then the next question is a book that made you cry. So for this one, I didn't cry, but I definitely felt extremely, extremely sad, and I might have teared up a little bit, and that was Educated by Tara Westover. This is not a fiction book, this is a memoir, and it is just so freaking sad. And what happens here is she writes about her experiences growing up in rural Idaho with her family. The family is super religious, they're very strict, they don't want their kids to go to school. So Tara, she never even goes to school until I think she was 16 or 17. So that was the first time she ever visited a school. So she's writing about her childhood and then also the years afterwards, what happened when she went to high school and ultimately university. And it's really sad. It's heartbreaking what happened to her and her family. And yes, it almost made me cry. The next question is a book that made you happy, and that is definitely going to be The Maid by Nita Prose. The next question is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. Well, hold on. For this, I'm going to go with Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I still haven't read this. This is one of the very, very few books that I have actually bought this year. I got it on thriftbooks.com, I believe. And yeah, this has been on my TBR for a really long time. I know it's super, super popular. And the movie that came out, 3 or 4 years ago, I think at this point, was extremely popular too. And I think this color is super beautiful with the gold and the pink accents. And the last question, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I have been putting off reading A Little Life for as long as I can remember. First of all, it is supposed to be extremely, extremely upsetting and sad. There are trigger warnings for everything you can imagine on there. I've already looked up that list. It is extremely long as well. So those are two things that are not really enticing me to read something right away. But at this point, I've heard about it so many times that I just really need to read it too. I just have to. And another book that I want to read before the year is over is Finley, Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead. This is the sequel to Finley, Donovan is Killing It, and I loved that first book. That book is a super fun mystery. You can read that in a day if you want to. I think it's the perfect beach read, honestly. And this book follows Finley, who is a struggling author. She's in the middle of a divorce right now. She's trying to finish a book, and she meets up with her agent at a Panera, and they're talking about her book. So her thriller book, of course, has murder in it, so they're talking about that. And there is this woman that's sitting close by, and she's overhearing the conversation, and she is actually thinking that Finley is a hitman. So what the woman does, she writes a little note and slips it to Finley, and it's basically saying, I give you $50,000 if you kill my husband. And then it goes from there, and it's a wild ride, and I really, really liked it. It was open-ended, of course, that's not a spoiler. Obviously, there's a sequel. and I would love to read that this year. All right, and there you have it. That was the mid-year Freakout book tag. I hope you enjoyed this video. Also, let me know what are some of your favorite books of the year, or maybe some of the books that you didn't like so much, or just let me know what you think about the books that I mentioned if you've read them. And with that, I'll see you next time. Bye.